Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. It's episode 2632 of The Tom Woods Show, and we are checking in with our old friend Kevin Dolan because the event we talked about the last time he was on has now taken place. And it's Natal Con. It has to do with having more babies and how important that is and how weirdly countercultural that is and how we ever got to this point is a question in itself. But I'm curious about not only how did it go and what was said and who was there, but also the media reaction, because are they really going to make having more babies seem controversial? Are they actually going to try to go down that road? The same way they tried to say that going to the gym and eating well are right-wing things. So that, like, everything that is life-affirming is now right-wing. I don't know what's going on. Kevin, welcome back.
Oh, it's good to be here, man.
All right, so talk to me. We'll talk about the media reaction a little bit later. But yeah, this is the second year in a row you've done this. What was different this time?
Yeah, so it was about twice the size, which was tremendous. We had about 200 people in the room, and a lot more like mainstream academic participants. People like Robin Hanson, Brian Kaplan, Catherine McCulloch, Jessica Flanagan. People who are the last time around, we really tried to get academics, and we were really surprised at how few were willing to even touch this issue at all, let alone come to a conference on it. And now it seems like both the issue has become more mainstream, but also just like the climate around speech in America in general, I feel like has relaxed. People feel a little bit more comfortable, saying obvious things like babies are good. So, we're back. I don't know, but it feels pretty good.
Yeah. So now the thing is, let's put it bluntly. This is not a cheap event to attend. It was a chunk of change to get there. So I guess in the future you're going to change the format to make it possible for more people to get there.
Yeah. So we'll probably still do a sponsor supported academic conference, which will involve So this one was dinner and breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So that's where the costs are. And when you have like a big panel of speakers and you have to make room for them, make time for them, those costs add up. So we were kind of stuck with the bill on that. But we're thinking in parallel to that, we want to go for something that's more like a festival, more like a farmer's market, where we can engage, frankly, more young single people, who don't have that kind of disposable income to throw around, and situations where they can, learn to dance together, learn to paint, buy some, healthy food, healthy consumer products, and create more of like that kind of an atmosphere where it's farmers markets are interesting because it's a place where like you can have your like total like blue state hippie type person, and you can have your total red state like farmer, and they find that like when they're talking about organic produce and things, they actually they have a lot in common. And so we were thinking about bridging the gap that way, and also just making it a more of an open and low cost way for people to get together.
All right, so talk to me about some of the things that were said. And let's face it, they're at an event like this, we're not going to name names. And please don't name names. There are the occasional oddballs, okay?
Sure.
I'm a little curious about the oddballs, but I'm more curious about what some of the academics are saying. The academic who would be willing to go to an event put on by Kevin Dolan and talk about topics like this. What's their perspective on it? Or do they have anything fresh to say?
Yeah, so Dr. McCulloch had a really interesting speech about how basically babies are like horses, and how horses used to have a straightforward economic function, and now they don't. And so like horses have gone from being a major component of pretty much everybody's life to being like a niche thing for hobbyists. And I thought that was a pretty interesting take. And like, how do you deal with the ramifications of that? Like, because babies are not actually like a niche hobbyist thing. Like in the long run, they actually are fundamental to the survival of the human race. And so, how do you deal with the fact that in the short run, and in brute economic terms, they no longer fill the economic role they used to? So that was a really interesting talk. We had several academics talk about like the role of nature and nurture, and presented the perspective that basically twin studies suggest that your kids mostly are who they are as long as you don't like egregiously mistreat them. And so a lot of people could relax and not worry so much about like, packing everybody into the minivan to go to all of the activities and all of the enrichment and all of the soccer games, that you could be a little bit lower effort in order to allow yourself the space to have more kids, and your kids would probably turn out fine anyway, which I thought was a pretty interesting perspective. And yeah, I mean, those were kind of the interesting fault lines, if there were fault lines, were like, what role does genetics play, and how interested should we be in like modifying genetics? That was kind of a hot button topic, because you had people more like me who come into this from more of like a religious and conservative perspective, but then you had like people on the tech right who were like, yeah, I want to grow a baby in an artificial womb, and I want to modify all their genome, and so and we were, to be clear, like we view this conference as at this stage wholly educational, and so it's like we're not here to push a particular perspective. We're here to like bring as many people as we can to like go nuts. Tell us your craziest idea. And we definitely got, a huge diversity of opinions.
So is it just a series of this person speaks, this person speaks, this person speaks? Do you have breakout sessions? What happened?
Yeah, so we actually had substantial unconference. So we had some main stage, we had some side stage, and then we had some unconference. And for those who have attended your Orlando event, they know where they're going to find out about how an unconference works, which is basically the attendees bring topics which you then vote on, and the group selects what they want to hear about and what they want to talk about, and then they break off into their separate groups and talk about it. And that was really rich. We had Robin Hansen do an event with some single men, and then we had Simone Collins, and I'm blanking now, I'm gonna get in trouble. But several of the female speakers came and discussed with the ladies, what the dating situation is like. And it was very much an exchange. It was very bilateral. Like, what are you seeing? What's going on in your world? What problems are you observing? Because I think a big part of the challenge of studying this issue is that it's very hard to it's hard to get like real good data on why people are not pairing off and having kids. If you're like giving them a rate your response from 1 to 5, how do you feel? Like, that's just very low resolution information. So like these deep personal conversations were, I think, really, really valuable.
What did you learn from this? You're the organizer. You think about these things all the time. It would be very hard to come up with something that would surprise you. Now, I guess you've shared a little bit. But did you discover a new way to think about it, or a new way to talk about it, or different perspectives, ideas, plans for the future?
Yeah. So, the talk I found most personally enjoyable was from Jonathan Keeperman, who's known to some as Lomez, who he's one of our sponsors of the conference. But the topic of his talk was, here's why we should immediately disband and abolish Natal Con, and why I'm not a pro-natalist. And his perspective was basically that this should not be a political issue, that we should not acknowledge anti-natalism as a legitimate line of philosophy, because it's basically just nihilism and like clinical depression, and that having kids and having families should be the default. And obviously, he was being a little bit rhetorical there, but it did make me think about, like, how do we message this? What's the right way to talk about this? Because it should be normal. It should be completely typical. And I think it is probably a mistake to treat this as like, again, like a niche, weird thing that a couple of people are doing. Because having babies can't be that. Having babies has to be the default.
Yeah. Hey, everybody, I think you've heard me say that I was paying for health insurance for my kids and me, not including my wife, who had a separate policy, over $3,000 a month. $3,000 a month. Well, we're not doing that anymore. And so listen to me. You've just got to put your foot down. There is no way you're pleased with your health insurance policy or what you're paying for it. So I urge you to do what the Woods family does. Restore sanity to your health care with Crowd Health. Not to mention the feeling of satisfaction you get when you secede from the system. Because this is not health insurance. It's a better way to pay for health care through crowdfunding. For $175 for an individual or $575 for a family of 4 or more, you'll get access to a community of people who are willing to help out in the event of an emergency. You'll get access to telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, and so much more, and you don't have to worry about doctors' networks at all. Let Crowd Health help with your healthcare needs. Get started today for just $99 per month for your first 3 months. Go to joincrowdhealth.com and use code WOODS. Crowd Health is not insurance. Learn more at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, and remember code WOODS. So I confess I did not look at any of the media coverage. I wanted to wait to hear you tell me about it. So first of all, you had a tremendous amount of a very significant media presence there from big time media outlets.
Yeah. And we turned a lot of them away, actually. We were selected about who we invited. And, but we had New York Times there. We had NPR, CNN, The Economist, the Epoch Times. We had several.
The BBC?
The BBC, yes.
Yeah.
I think they interviewed some people remotely, but yeah. That was crazy. And basically my fear was that they would just sort of use the fact they'd been invited to just sort of slander my friends and slander the attendees. And I did find that people chose to cover it in different ways. And the two angles that I've seen most often are, they came to this event, they saw a bunch of normal people, right? People trying to figure it out. And some of the people are a little bit nerdy and quirky, but they're normal people. And basically the journalists had two things they could say about that. They could either say these, superficially normal, quirky people are actually insidious, dark, they're hiding deep evil inside themselves. And the other way you could look at that is no, this is actually who these people are. They're totally normal and fine. And, maybe they got some mean tweets, but these are regular people. And that, I think, was clearly the angle that CNN took. The CNN profile was really sympathetic. They interviewed a young guy who was it kind of sucks. There's not more single ladies here. But it was, it was very sympathetic to him and sympathetic to the conference. And they even kind of let me address, how do you feel about the fact that you've been called a Nazi or whatever? And I was like, look, I know so many people who are so obviously they want everybody to win, and they're very loving and friendly and open to everybody kind of people who've been called that. And you just can't be governed. You can't run your life around what names these people are going to choose to call you. So I was really impressed with actually CNN's coverage. That was crazy to me. I was shocked. And then of course some other ones went some other directions.
All right. Well, every now and then we do get surprised Every now and then we do get surprised by, if even if not weirdly favorable coverage, sometimes just neutral coverage, I'm happy enough with.
Basically, yeah.
But tell me about, did you have not very nice coverage at all?
Yeah. I mean, there was one outlet that basically they didn't quote anything that I said to them during our interview at the event. They quoted some podcasts that I did where I not to get too far afield, but I did a book review of Bronze Age Pervert's dissertation. And I expressed some of his opinions, and they pull quoted that and were like, this guy believes these things. And then they did this long detour where they talked to some extremism researcher about his opinion about the kinds of books I must be reading. And it's like, give me a break. And it had essentially nothing to do with the event itself. Which, it's almost not even interesting to talk about because they could have written that from home, right?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, they are. It's like Lincoln Steffens going over to Bolshevik Russia and coming back and saying, "I have been over into the future and it works." He had written that even before he got there. He already knew what the conclusion was. He didn't need to see anything. And that's how they want to write articles about you and me. They've already written the article. They already know what the conclusion is. I will say now, this is at risk of my getting us a little bit afield, but back in 2019, my colleague Bob Murphy and I used to do the Contra cruise, and then COVID destroyed the cruise industry for several years, and now I'm doing a Tom Woods cruise. But anyway, the last one of the cruises we did together, there was a woman from Business Week, Bloomberg Business Week, who wanted to come on board and cover the cruise. Now, we knew exactly what this meant. This did not mean she's coming on board because she wants to give the Austrians a fair chance against the Keynesians. That was not it. She wanted to come on board to smear us and make us look ridiculous and all that. But Bob and I figured, what the heck? Why not?
Yeah.
Because what's the worst she could do? Write a mean article about us? But that just gives us street cred. That's not a problem. And anybody who was going to be dissuaded from coming on our cruise because of an article in Business Week is hopeless anyway,
Right.
So she came on board, and it came time for her to interview me. And I knew what she was going to say. Woods is a neo-Confederate racist who blah, 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 blah. I already know. I can write it for you. I already know what you're going to say. So I had my tape recorder, and I sat down and said, all right, here's what's going to happen. You have spent a week on board this cruise with us, and what you've discovered is that we're normal people, we're intelligent people. You heard my opening talk, and you know the points I made are not unreasonable and not crazy. However, you stand to gain nothing professionally by portraying us that way. You will instead go home and laugh about us to your colleagues and write a nasty article condemning us as backward and racist and evil and whatever you can think of. And she was taken aback because no one talks to her that way. She's with Business Week. They roll out the red carpet, and they kiss up to her. And she said, well, then why did you let me come on? And I said, because we figured, the worst you could do is write a nasty article. And, then that just shows that rallies our side to us. Tom and Bob must be over the target. It's no big deal. We just thought it would be interesting to observe, to see for ourselves that's what would happen, regardless of how you were treated, regardless of what you heard or saw. So what ended up happening, Kevin, is the article came out, and she didn't know what to do with us after I gave her that little speech. So she portrayed it as Bob Murphy good, Tom Woods bad.
Right,
and I thought, I'll take it. 50-50? I'll take it. I think I bought us a 50% favorable article by just shaming her like that and having a recording of the interview.
Yeah. Recording my side of the interviews, that would have been smart. I need to take a note for that one next time. One that was shocking, actually. We did not invite Mother Jones, and a Mother Jones reporter was kind of skulking around the periphery trying to talk to people, and I found her talking to a guy who I was really afraid that she would humiliate this guy and embarrass this guy, and I read the article. And her treatment of this guy was so sympathetic and so like decent to him that I actually reached out to her and I was like, hey, let's talk. Like what are you actually about? And I'm going to be going on a podcast with her tomorrow.
Well, how about that?
So, I think it's important to like, they're human beings and they get a job to do. And I think you have to, if you don't acknowledge when they do something right, then they will be in the same frame that we're in, which is like, you can't, like that lady who came on your cruise, she had no ability to influence you or incentivize you to do anything because you knew who she was and you couldn't win with her.
Yeah.
So who cares, right? And so I think, given people, even some people who we think are kind of nasty, giving them a way to win by just being baseline honest and decent, I think there's value.
Hey everybody, let's take a minute to thank our sponsor, Persist SEO. If you're getting buried by your competition online, then build your brand, your reputation, and your lead flow with digital marketing by Persist SEO. If you're a small local business trying to compete against large companies in the service industry, then increase your visibility with Persist SEO. What if you have low or no leads coming in on a consistent basis? Well, then website search engine and conversion optimization can help move the needle to a more prosperous business model for you. Are you tired of cold calling and networking? Use your website as a lead generation engine. What if you're not showing up for your services in the search engines? Well, get found with Persist SEO Expert Search Engine Optimization. All you have to do is call 770-580-3736 or visit them at ineedseo.help for a free website audit and consultation. That's 770-580-3736 or ineedseo.help. I agree with that, and especially because I also think they should be given a chance to see that we're smarter than they think, and we're more well-spoken than they think, and we have more interesting ideas than they think, and I like to make their heads explode in that way. So, and by the way, one of my favorite stories about the way the media treats people involves Mother Jones. I don't think you know him personally, but you might be familiar with the 10th Amendment Center, which is run by my friend Michael Bolden. He was the guest on episode number 1 of the Tom Woods Show, however many years ago that was, 11 and a half now, I think. And it's Mike. So Michael Bolden is a very interesting guy. He comes to this stuff from the left. And he started the 10th Amendment Center under George W. Bush, and he continued it through Barack Obama. And at that time, the left liberals were saying to him, well, where were you under George W. Bush? And he says, well, I was running the 10th Amendment Center, as a matter of fact. Well, you can imagine how somebody who runs something called the 10th Amendment Center would be treated, because if you favor decentralization, well, we know what that means, right? Because if there's only one possible issue that anybody ever thinks about in any context. So Mother Jones went to interview him with the absolute 100% intention of smearing and humiliating him.
Right.
And they sat down with him, and he's so charming and disarming and wonderful that they ended up writing a puff piece about him. I have never in my life ever seen somebody turn a reporter like that. I mean, he should do a masterclass on it, Kevin. It's amazing.
I'd like to talk to him.
Yeah. Like, what the heck did you do? But so these things can happen, and I'm very cynical on this show about that prospect. I feel like the divide is so wide, and the it's not even partisanship, I think, trivializes it. It really, really is a profound divide that goes beyond party division. But as you say, you're still dealing with a human being at the end of it, and you're still dealing with a human being who, by the way, sometimes has a crazy uncle who has your opinion, and they still love that uncle sometimes, and so maybe they might look at you as a person who's, a person just like their uncle.
You hope so. And I think it's changing. Like, I think that the failure of a lot of these mainstream media institutions to coerce people, I think it really has brought them around to like, okay, just calling these people bigots is not doing anything, and it's boring too. And like, these are, I've said this to several of like, the whole natalism issue is like, they're one of the divides is like, do we care that the libs aren't having kids? Right? Because a lot of people are like, well, let them not have kids and then they'll just die out and we'll take over the world and it'll be great. I actually I kind of miss when liberals were cool and made good art and made good music, and like, I sort of want them back. Stop doing all this political destructive nonsense and like get back to your real job, which is art and beauty. And so I think that there's a lot to be gained from reconnecting with each other and like rehumanizing each other. This issue in particular of babies, it's really hard to like get nasty about it. I think that it's disarming because it is such a fundamental problem. Because you can talk to some of these people who are so committed to their ideological program and be like, look, there is no argument you can make that this ideology isn't just completely sterilizing people. Like it's completely anti-human. And like none of you are having any kids. And so like even on your own, even by your own standards of like, is this good for the climate? Is this good for, poor people? Is this good for women? It's like, no, none of this is good for any of them. It's going to be the hardest on the most vulnerable people. So like, you got to come to the table. You got to talk about this problem. You don't. And like, I've told them, like, if I'm too hot for you in terms of being like too right wing or whatever, and you want to do like the lib Natal Con, like go do it. And if you want me to like make recommendations and like help you find a venue, help you talk to people about this, go talk to them about it. Because I want you to figure it out. And like, it's such a uniting issue, or it can be if we let it be.
Yeah. I mean, for heaven's sake, what's more fundamental than this after all? And now right. I think it's fair game to ask a personal question in this case, given that you're so dedicated to this particular issue. I think it's fair game to ask how many little ones you have, Kevin Dolan.
We got number 7 on the way.
Oh,
I actually announced it at the conference. In August, we're having number 7, a boy.
Oh, well, wait a minute, but you didn't announce it in the mastermind group on Signal.
You're right. I got to do that as soon as we hang up
because I didn't know about it. So because that's you and I communicate through the mastermind Signal group. So yeah. Well, whoever that Jeffrey Goldberg, whatever, is not in that group, but Kevin Dolan is, and that's how I learned about it. Well, congratulations to you guys.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so numbers. All right, so I have a mere 5 next to old Kevin here. But you were just telling me something very interesting about how you used AI to generate basically like homeschool curricula that were tailored to each of your kids. And I know people will say, oh, but it's ideologically biased and whatever. I want you to talk about how you did that. Because we're going to have you on the School of Life to do a full presentation on that, because that's really, really valuable. I mean, this is a whole new range of possibilities opening up.
Yeah, no, I mean, even 5 years ago, if you wanted to have some kind of alternative homeschool curriculum, you kind of had to pick from some other alternative perspective that, you hoped it was kind of close to your own, but it didn't necessarily have to be. And a lot of the big options, like, so I'm a Latter-day Saint. It's like we have different theological assumptions than a bunch of other religious people. And so like, that's really hard to like find something that's a fit. And this, I could just put in like, give me a curriculum and I will adjust it. Like if I don't like what you're saying about prehistory or about whatever, I can just fix it. And it's like in a matter of 30 seconds. And like, because especially with little kids, the challenge is not so much like the information, because all the stuff that you're teaching a third grader is stuff that you as an adult should know. It's structuring it and then asking the kids engaging questions and giving them fun activities to do that help them internalize what you're teaching them. And that's the kind of thing that like I'm no good at. Like it's really hard for me to like get into the mind of an 8-year-old and figure out how to help them engage. But like ChatGPT was actually like really good at that. And so like it said, you know, you're going to talk about nomadism and you're going to read them this little blurb that's like 2 reading level, you know, here's what nomadism was like in prehistory. And there's all kinds of interesting like ideological directions you could go from there. But like, that's up to you as a parent. Like you can engineer that, you can build that out. And then it was like, you're going to ask your 10-year-old this question. And you're going to ask your 8-year-old this question. You're going to ask your 6 and your 5-year-old this question. And like, it was perfect. It was like, oh yeah, she would find that question really interesting. And so then it was like, you're going to do cave painting. And so you're going to get a brown paper bag and some charcoal and you're going to like draw the animals that you're hunting as nomads. And I was like, that's a great idea. And I would never have thought. You know, those topics, I think it's great for. And then like math, you know, a lot of it is just help me explain this at a lower level of resolution or at a simpler level. Help me break this down. Because a lot of people, you know, a lot of people who are doing homeschool, especially if they're not like, you know, math majors, mathematics people, like they know how to do long division, but they don't know how to like hammer home the intuition of why it works the way it does and what the mechanics are and why it matters. And I found that any of the large language models, the main like all-purpose large language models, are really, really good at that. And so it's you're in incredible level of control over how you do it, and you can tailor it so specifically to each of the kids and their interests. And you know, my little boy plays soldiers, and they're like, well, here's how you're going to draw battle maps that help them learn about the Iliad or whatever. Like these are the fast ships of the Achaeans, and you know, these are the you know, this is the hill where they're coming up on the city, and this is where, you know, Hector got dragged around the walls, and you know, so you can pinpoint like exactly what your kids think is cool.
You know, that is what I did use it recently for. Even though one of the things I pride myself on in terms of being a teacher and from my old days as a math tutor in high school is that everyone hates math, but I can explain it so that you understand it. And I would get everyone saying, well, if my teacher just explained it like that, I would have understood it. And I never understood, why don't the teachers explain it like that? You know, so I never went out of business as a math teacher because no one ever explained it that way. So I could, even for my own kids, now I can sit down and say, well, the easiest way to do it is to think of it this way. And then they would say, well, now I understand it. But the one thing in like middle schoolish, like late elementary, early middle school math that is, it's tricky to teach is lowest common denominator. Because how does the kid know that maybe you could teach them that with 8 and 7, it's got to be 56. But if it's 6 and 8, how do you teach them that it's 24? You know, without, we could do all the prime factors, but I mean, you're going to lose them if you use these kinds of methods. So I said to ChatGPT, explain this, tell me how I would explain to a 10-year-old how to do this. And I think it basically struggled because I think it's just flat out a difficult thing to do. And in a way that made me feel better. Well, okay, this unbelievable engine of wisdom cannot come up with a simple way to do it. So I thought, okay, so it's not me. That really is an annoying thing to learn. It's the kind of thing, eventually you get the hang of it. Like you see, you have 3/4 and 1/12, and you realize 12 is a multiple of 4, etc. You know, you'll start to, but they're just going to have to see that. You know,
know what? I think it's because you have to go through enough problems where you've seen that you needed that to motivate the intuition.
Yeah.
Like, here's why I need to grip this, and then you grip it and it slides in.
But it's really interesting that now you can take a word problem and put it into, let's say, Grok 3, and particularly put it on think mode, and it will give you a very systematic explanation of each step. So, for instance, there are these mixture problems, like if you have a 20% salt solution and you're using 2.3 liters of it, and you combine that with 2.7 liters of an 80% salt solution, how much salt is in the resulting, whatever, it will explain the thinking behind these kinds of problems. So, I mean, I don't know how, if I were a teacher these days, I don't know how I would assign anything, because everything can be done that way. I mean, ultimately, the real test is, can the student do it in the classroom?
Right. Yeah, and that's going to be an interesting challenge. Like, I'm sympathetic to the argument that there's a certain amount of wax on, wax off, like a physicality to drawing out long division and or diagramming a sentence or what, the hard stuff that ChatGPT helps you avoid, and maybe it's dangerous to circumvent that. But I also remember being a kid and the amount of nonsense that we were asked to do. And I'm sort of on the side of the students, yeah, man, if you get helping people get around nonsense is a huge part of the adult utility of ChatGPT. And so you should, as a young man, you should learn how to do that, because you're going to need it.
Yeah, because you're going to be given busy work the rest of your life that has nothing to do with anything, that you never need,
Yeah.
And
you
the thing is,
launch a mutiny, so you better just have the machine do it.
I mean, Kevin, I mean, you're looking at somebody who genuinely loves math. I love it. I think it's beautiful and elegant and wonderful. And I was co-captain of the math team, and I did all these special math exams, and I placed really, really high for our high school on the annual exam of the Massachusetts Association of Mathematics Leagues, the MAML exam. I love it. And yet even I can't really explain why a kid who's never going to go into this needs math above a certain level. I mean, as long as they can cook and follow a recipe and understand that, well, if they need a half a cup of this and 3/4 a cup of that, they understand what that means, or if they had to combine them, they'd know how much it was. I don't know why they need to know about parabolas or I mean, I don't know. I actually don't know.
It's hard to motivate it when it came so naturally to you. And for me, I have that problem with writing and English with my kids. How do I make them love this? Or history. But with math, for me, it was, I had kind of, like you're talking about, a really good calculus teacher in college. And that was right at the same time when I was discovering economics. And it's there's actually all sorts of things that are social science, loosey-goosey human questions that actually become, at least in theory, tractable if you know a little bit of calculus and a little bit of stats. And then all of a sudden I was oh, this is super cool. And then I was doing 8 hours of calculus a day, because I was I need to understand this. So yeah, I think it really does come down to what do you want from life?
Yeah.
And how are you going to go get it? I mean, I have kids who I know don't want to be engineers, and already that's very clear to me. And so it's let's teach you what you need to know to create the kind of beauty and the kind of have the rich life that you need to have. And that's, I mean, this Prussian system of everyone must go through the whole protocol. I think it's just fundamentally wrongheaded.
All right. Is it too early to, do you know what the dates for next year's event will be?
We're targeting the same time next year, March of 2026. That's going to be a really interesting time, because it's going to be primary season, and there's going to be a lot going on. So we're really interested in getting the word out at that time. And yeah, it'll probably be back here in Austin again. But yeah, if natalism.org, if you go, you can find the mailing list, and that would be the way to get in touch and make sure that you're getting updates.
All right, natalism.org. It's a pretty important topic, babies, and the continuation of of civilization. Very important. And Kevin Dolan here is your man. So check that out, natalism.org. Kevin, I'm glad you had a successful event, and I hope next year's even more successful for your sake and for that of, all the world.
Indeed. Thank you, Tom, so much. I really appreciate it.
And thank you very much, both Kevin and all you ladies and gentlemen listening.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.